By 1952, the country was tired of war and skeptical because of McCarthyism. President Truman decided not to run for re-election, and so in his place, the Democrats put up a weak candidate in Adlai Stevenson. It seemed like anybody could beat this guy, and Americans wanted change after 20 years of Democratic Party rule, all the way back to the election of Franklin Roosevelt in 1932. This leads to the election of Dwight D. Eisenhower. In November 1952, war hero General Dwight D. Eisenhower is elected to the presidency. Ike, as he was known, won by promising to end the war in Korea and by representing a change to a post-war calm in America. Eisenhower's legacy as president was one of dynamic conservatism. Ike believed that government should be fiscally responsible, but liberal when it came to people's rights. He lowered taxes, increased the minimum wage and entitlements, and he made 3 new cabinet offices, officially expanding the power of the presidency. He is also responsible for the prosperity of the 1950s. Seen as a grandfatherly figure, Ike followed a middle-of-the-road administration style. Using patriotism, an ability to avoid controversy, and optimism, Ike became a very popular president of the United States.
Ike approved the construction of a system of roadways that connected the entire country. Americans used highways to travel to work from their suburban homes. They also used it to travel and vacation further than before. Because of the highway system, the national parks became incredibly popular, as they are today. As drivers took to the roads, towns and businesses popped up along the highways. Old towns and older roads died off. Think Radiator Springs from the movie Cars. As the popularity of the interstate system grew, more and more cars were on the road. This led to traffic jams, creating stress, and even death by automobile. In addition to this, with this number of cars on the road, pollution began to rise. A little known fact about the highway system, it was also created to transport military vehicles across the country, in case of war. Next time you go under an overpass, check out the yellow sign. Every overpass must be high enough to allow a nuclear missile traveling on a flatbed truck to pass underneath it.
The 1950s also ushered in a new era of business that would change the American economy forever. The 1950s American workforce transitioned from blue-collar jobs to white-collar jobs. These jobs were higher paying. They were managerial professions, based on services and not goods. Instead of making goods, workers sold goods. Workers wore suits to office jobs, while at the same time began to have careers. Careers are any profession where you have the ability to move up the corporate ladder and be promoted to higher positions with higher pay. At the same time, 2 new types of businesses popped up everywhere around America. These 2 types of businesses dominate the American economy today. The first is a conglomerate. A conglomerate is a major corporation that owns smaller companies in unrelated industries. A great example of this today is Disney. Disney started out as a film company and then went into amusement parks. But today, Disney owns ESPN, ABC, Star Wars, and Marvel. The second type of business is a franchise. Franchises are companies that offer similar products in many different locations. A great example of a franchise that rose up in the 1950s is McDonald's. McDonald's started as a hamburger stand that sold cheeseburgers, hamburgers, fries, and soft drinks. Then McDonald's scaled and had many different locations around the country. And at any one of those locations, you could get the exact same food at the exact same price. This was a first in the American economy.
The 1950s also brought about an era of conformity. While American men were making careers, they were losing their individuality. Becoming an organization man was the way to advance, so workers standardized to fit in. Men wore the same suits, the same tie, and a white shirt to the office as to not stand out. Workers followed the crowd and did as they were told. During this time, it was dangerous to be creative. Companies gave personality tests to potential hires to ensure they'd fit in. A worker who rocked the boat would be bad for business, so teamwork and loyalty were rewarded most of all. The era of conformity brought on the adage, you can wear any shirt to the office as long as it's white. Success in the business world allowed Americans to provide for their families. Men with steady jobs and high pay could give their families the good things. Most Americans worked in office jobs in the cities, but they lived in the suburbs. With America the world's economic giant, the 50s were a time of prosperity. So now let's take a look at the American family. During the 1950s, the American dream was on the mind of every family. People got married young, and they wanted lots of kids. They wanted a little house with a yard, a car, and a dog. As World War II vets came home, witnessing the horrors of war, all they wanted to do was settle down and create a family. This brought about the baby boom. From 1945 to 1965, the U.S. birth rate soared. On average, 1 baby was born every 7 to 10 seconds. This equates to 4.3 million per year. As much as women advanced during World War II working in the factories, the 50s was a decade of setback for women. Once the men returned home to take their jobs, women were expected to return to the kitchen and housekeep. Women were expected to stay home, clean, cook, and be obedient, and these roles were glorified in the media. Women who worked didn't make much and were harassed by their male superiors.
New advances and possibilities changed lifestyles and the family dynamic in the 1950s. One of them was moving to the Sun Belt. Families moved from cold northern cities, also known as the Frost Belt in the northern region of the country, to warm southern climates in the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt was the southern region of the country, running from California all the way to Florida. With more income in the federal highway system, it was possible for Americans to live where they wanted, and most of the time, they wanted to live in warm weather climates. With air conditioning available in new homes, families wanted to live in more comfortable environments. There were also major advances in medicine and childcare in the 1950s. Childhood mortality rates plummeted in the 50s because of the creation of vaccines for two diseases, typhoid and polio. Dr. Jonas Salk created a vaccine for polio, a disease that crippled and or killed thousands of kids yearly. New medical treatments like the iron lung, although scary for parents to see, helped prolong the life of victims of polio. At the same time, Dr. Salk's vaccine for polio virtually eliminated the contraction of the disease among children. Think about it today. How many people do you know that have polio? Part of the reason for this is because as an infant, you are vaccinated from the disease. And it's all thanks to Dr. Jonas Salk. In fact, Dr. Salk was so proud of his accomplishment, he decided to never patent the formula so that there was never any money to be made on the vaccine, but instead it could be shared for the betterment of mankind. Another doctor, Dr. Benjamin Spock, wrote a book on childcare, encouraging mothers to stay home and nurture their kids. With vast wealth and new goods available, Americans bought up like never before, and the 1950s saw a surge in American consumerism. Having the newest and best things became a competition between neighbors in suburban life, and the expression keeping up with the Joneses was born. With convenient new products available, Americans bought electric household appliances like washing machines, dishwashers, freezers, and television sets. American companies also produced around the idea of planned obsolescence. Companies purposely made products that would become obsolete quickly in order to keep consumers buying the next edition. In today's economy, this would be what we'd see when Apple would purposely make one of their products outdated, and you would have the desire to buy the new one, just to have the latest and greatest thing. The 50s also saw a boom in advertisement. A huge new industry developed around advertisement, appealing to people's desires for status as to sell more products. Ads ran on televisions, in magazines, and on billboards, and usually projected the image that having a certain product would make you better and more successful.
Any place, any time is a good time for Coke.
Only Coca-Cola gives you that refreshing new feeling, refreshing new feeling, refreshing new feeling. Coca-Cola's bright and lively. Coca-Cola has more zest. Coca's a lot more zest in living. Refreshing zest. Only Coca-Cola gives you that refreshing new feeling.